All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for bearing with me getting through that display issue. February, we're not seeing much of this weather this winter, sadly. Okay, today's agenda, normal introduction. We'll have our Stroud updates. Pete Goodman's going to talk to us about salt pollution in Valley Creek and his organization's response to that, working with EACs and talking to the community, fact sheets and other data communication products. We are recording today, FYI. Please remember that all these recordings are available at this resources page. You can either go to wikiwatershed.org and then go to the DRWI tab, or just go to this address. These meetings are every third Thursday of the month, 2:30 to 3:30. Zoom link is always the same. Put it in your calendars if you like. And as I mentioned before we started recording, feel free to pass on the invitations to anyone you think might want to attend. So folks who are attending include folks that are working directly in the Delaware River Watershed Initiative, others who aren't specifically associated with DRWI but are within the DRB, and then there are some folks attending from outside the DRB. We're supporting these meetings and this general community science work via DRWI and Seesaw. 4 States, 1 Source is the DRWI webpage. The EnviroDIY and the DRB and the Stroud Community Science is just a small portion of DRWI. Seesaw is a PA Growing Greener program, Consortium for Scientific Assistance to Watersheds. It's only available to watershed groups in Pennsylvania, but we are able to provide support to groups via those funds as well. The purpose of these meetings is just a time for us to check in on all things EnviroDIY and the DRB monitoring. We provide updates, and we usually have a presentation, science topics, engagement topics, data outreach and communication topics. Myself, Rachel Johnson, Krista Reeves, Shannon Hicks are kind of the central kind of Stroud community science team. Krista is a part-time Stroud person, full-time Musconetcong Watershed Association person. And then Carol Armstrong and George Seeds, Master Watershed Stewards with Chester County, Delaware County, play big roles in this community science effort. And then the Stroud DRWI leads are John Jackson, Matt Earhart, and Dave Arscott. Our primary goal, the Stroud perspective, in terms of our primary goal with regard to EnviroDIY and the DRB and overall community science and monitoring, is to support watershed groups in doing what they want to do in terms of monitoring and using data. Secondarily, we're supporting that with data analyses and developing tools and providing various levels of support with regard to data and analysis and communication of data and so on. Just a reminder that the EnviroDIY manual is online. It's searchable, organized into different sections and some appendices. Make use of that as you need. Feel free to be in touch with questions. And then this resources page has a lot of the stuff that we talk about in these meetings, all kinds of, your data entry is here for your field visits to your stations, salt monitoring resources. All of our meetings and conferences and workshops recordings are here, as well as the presentations themselves. Quick guides and stuff like that are here, so feel free to make use of that. These snapshots or these synoptic samplings or blitzes, people have been doing these. They've been pretty successful and are really tuning people into the details, the really in focus view of what's happening throughout a watershed with regard to salt contamination and potential sources. There's a protocol. There's a lot of variations you can take from the protocol that we've written up. This is a plot of a recent snapshot a number of us did, Master Watershed stewards, some community members, Westchester University, 100 and some sites in Westchester over a couple days last week or the week before. Quite a bit of contamination. You can see that here's the EPA level, here's the Canadian level, 50 milligrams per liter, sort of a low impact level, hazard threshold, and then natural level. So you can see contamination in urban and suburban areas is just extremely prevalent. So I will pass it off. I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to pass it off to David Manning, who is going to provide some updates of the recently organized local policy and practice work group spin-off subcommittee thing that from these meetings. David is a master watershed steward and Schuylkill water steward, working with the Green Valleys Watershed Association and supporting you know, a lot of this stuff that we're doing these days. So I will stop share and let David take over for his slides. His slides will be built into my presentation, so those will be incorporated into the available presentation that will be on the resources page.
Okay, great. Let me get this going. Hopefully you can all see that. So this is a group that emerged actually from this group, EnviroDIY in the DRB, based upon conversations over maybe the past 6 months of meetings that we've had. We've met once as a group the past month for an hour to begin discussing questions of work group structure and objectives for this work group. So given that it's only been an hour, we're still at a pretty preliminary state with regard to the things that we need to discuss. With regard to the structure of the work group, we have currently 6 participants, as I've listed here. We have logistical support and more from Dave Bressler as well. Ian Brastow has a professional interest in this work group, so he'll be taking the lead with regard to coordination and keeping the rest of us in line. We're pretty good with the number of participants, at least from a conversational standpoint, but clearly we don't have enough in the way of different perspectives or in the way of different technologies represented, different interplays with municipalities represented here. So we do need to expand. We need to expand now, and we need to expand also in the future. If any of you are interested in joining us, the work is not too onerous. You can plug in, you can plug out at will, it's okay. But please, if you're interested, why don't you let Dave Bressler know, and we can take it from there. Our meetings once a month, the first Thursday of each month at 11 o'clock, and that's by Zoom. And as mentioned, we've only had 1 meeting so far. We're still settling into the process of defining what a charge would be for our work group. A charge would be a specific objective in the coming whatever amount of time. Central to the charge, clearly, however, is exploring the means by which individuals, either alone or in groups, can most effectively engage municipal entities in relation to stream and watershed concerns. But from that point on, it becomes a question of focus, and charges have to be really specific. And, the sentence in blue is not as specific as we need. So one sentiment that we've been exploring within the committee is to focus on how to best use data from stream monitors and other monitoring efforts to inform public policy. Stream data would be, of course, temperature. Stream monitor data would be temperature, depth, conductivity, sometimes turbidity. Other monitoring efforts would be things like the salt snapshots. So this, in a sense, is a deep dive for a work group, should we choose this as a focus, a deep dive in the significance of these data and how the significance maps to the needs and the interests and the policies of different municipal entities and the communities that they represent. The advantage of this as a focus is that it's concise, and that's what you need as a charge. And it also covers the kinds of things that we know best, I think, out of the work group. Now, another sentiment is over on the right-hand side of the slide. And this is something that says, the data that we have out of the stream monitors are great. And we can use those, certainly we can use those, but there are other things that we might be interested in too. Erosion situations, hazards, other types of community concerns. And so would it be better to focus instead on exploring the various mechanisms by which we might interact with municipalities? These would be questions of access. How do we gain access to the different entities? Questions of what kind of leverage can we achieve with each kind of entity? What are the different kinds of leverages and so forth? So as you can see, it's pretty obvious that these two frameworks of focus are not mutually exclusive. They aren't. And I suspect that we're going to tend to one or the other, but not to the exclusion of the one that we don't tend to. Again, however, it's a question of framing the specific charge so that we have something to work on in a constructive kind of way. Some more. There you go. Municipal entities, just to formalize, we're thinking in terms of environmental advisory groups, EACs, or in some states, ECs, zoning hearing boards, planning commissions, boards of supervisors. If we should choose any kind of an educational mission, school boards might be among the things we want to know about. And clearly, we as a work group have to educate ourselves with regard to the structure of these entities, what they work on, what their policies are, power dynamics, and things like zoning laws, impervious coverage, all the stuff that's covered by these entities and is relevant to us. And I did leave off this list, the community itself. I also left off this list, the environment, because we're really interested in the environment and we're really interested in the safety and the welfare of the community. But these are the most accessible representations of the community and environment. Any input on that would be great. Last slide, mechanisms of engagement came up in our conversation. In terms of engaging municipalities, it can be as simple as an individual interacting with a member of an environmental advisory committee, or it can be as complicated, and this really came up in our meeting as well, of the interaction between a grouping of watershed associations and a collection of municipalities. Questions that were raised at this level were, what is it about our data, or what is it about our circumstance that would actually trigger engagement? And would it be us engaging with whatever on the municipal side, or are there some circumstances that we want to encourage those on the municipal side engaging, actually engaging us as points of reference? As I've mentioned, how do the data map or the circumstance map to the needs, the interests, the policies of the municipalities. That's really key, I think, in the success of what we're going to be doing here. And the last question is, what might be the exact nature of engagement? We talked a lot in our meeting. It was a good 1-hour meeting, I'll admit, about different kinds of liaisons with environmental advisory committees, friendships, and so forth with those that exist on these kinds of municipalities. So that's it. In terms of what we need from you as the larger group is those who'd be interested in working with us, for sure. Any ideas you might have for us at any kind of level, and of course, questions and your perspectives, as we will continue to update you at most of the EnviroDIY and the DRB meetings in the future.
Thank you, David. That was great. And we did, wanted to remind folks that we did have a sign up last meeting. And a lot of folks put their name on the list to be sort of informed about what we were doing. And along those lines, so there was like a group of 30 people that signed up. And then we had the leaders group sign up, which was the 7 David mentioned. But we have considered having bigger meetings, like maybe quarterly or twice a year or something like that, where we could sort of more formally present information that has been gathered, resources, and get feedback from the broader group. This is all kind of in the works, but just, sort of thinking about ways that we move forward in the future. So we are at 2:52, right on track for our presentation from Pete Goodman. Pete, if you were ready, you can share screen and proceed.
Okay. How about that? Looks like it's happening, eh?
Yep, we can see it.
David had asked me and Trout Unlimited some time ago, maybe about this time last year, if we were interested in working on a salt fact sheet for Valley Creek, knowing that Valley Creek is kind of the poster child for Chester County. Our salinity ratings are the highest in the county, or among the highest. I pretty much jumped on that. I thought that was a terrific idea. I had seen the salt fact sheet that the Tukane group had done, and I thought we could do something along those lines, maybe even make it a little bit more dramatic. And I think we were successful. What you're looking at on the slide is the first panel on the left. Salt is killing Valley Creek. It's a bifold 8.5 by 11 brochure, essentially. The center 2 panels become the center of it, and then the panel on the right is the rear, would be the rear of the document. Our initial discussions were for what purpose were we doing this fact sheet, and that we pretty much honed down to educate an audience and to advocate for some changes. And of course, then that begs the question, well, who's the audience? And the target audience, I felt, should be the EACs, the environmental advisory councils of our local area. And I didn't want to just have TU produce this fact sheet and have it reside on our website someplace that nobody ever sees it or uses it. I wanted it to be out there and to be used. So I've taken on to take my little brochures and do a road show with a number of EACs. To date, I've hit 15, I think, EACs. Uh, got a real boost in January when I presented to the Northern Chester County EAC group, which was 12 EACs at one time. So I got a real bang for the buck there. So moving along, that's the our salt brochure, and really the heart of the salt brochure is that chart on the second page that shows the salinity of Valley Creek just ramping up at a phenomenal rate. We needed a place to hide this, not hide, present this salt fact sheet. And on the right-hand part of the screen is a screenshot from our salt pollution webpage. And the chart is prominent on that page. And then down at the bottom of that page are a number of resources that we talked about on the left-hand panel of this slide. So the link to the Valley Forge Trout Unlimited website is valleyforgetu.org. And then the salt pollution is actually discussed on the front page. You can get to it by going there, or you can go directly to the salt pollution page in the second header here. Oops, change screens on me. So this is the chart that really forms the interest level for me of our salt fact sheet. We paid an artist to produce this for us, and I think it's it just is a terrific visual representation of what's going on in Valley Creek. Over 61 years of data, which is incredible, you know, that we have that long of a storyline that we can use and tell. So yeah, we're getting some readings that are up into the red level. Actually, today we got some seriously red level readings. I was out with Dave Manning and
John
help
Wilson.
me, David.
Yeah, John Wilson.
John Wilson, right? And we took a walk on Krabby Creek, the western branch, which has showed exceptionally high values in our salt snapshot, which this is the map of the salt snapshot that was done November 9th this past year, after we had pretty much 3 weeks of non-weather. So this was base flow condition. And you can see, I'll move my cursor around. Down here is the circle is number 1 near the Home Depot in Fraser, and the salt level was 34 milligrams per liter, the lowest that we recorded anywhere in the watershed. We could jump over to Krabby Creek at number 48. We actually sampled 52 locations, or looked at 52 locations. We couldn't sample them all because some of them were dry, but we sampled all that were flowing, and Krabby Creek and Cedar Hollow Run near Vanguard registered the highest levels that we recorded that day at 281 milligrams per liter sodium. So those are pretty high background levels. This is pretty much groundwater that is giving us those values. Certainly by this point, we're looking at 60% of stream flow being groundwater. So this map brought up a lot of curiosities to me, a lot of questions. Why so high in some places and not in others? Why is it lower on the main stem than seemingly Little Valley Creek? Why is Krabby so dramatically high? We took a walk on Krabby this morning, and we're marching up this western tributary, trying to find a hotspot source. And of course, we run across the solar salt bags spent in the creek, which is just a little telling for what we are doing to our streams. But we got up to the top of the watershed. There's a head wall, 2 pipes with flowing water running out of it, a small pipe and a larger pipe. Small pipe measured, I believe that was the 740, and then the spring house that was, there's just a ruin of a spring house up there. We tested the water in that, and that was 730 milligrams per liter. So those are way high, and there's not a real smoking gun that we can point our finger at and say, boy, there's the source of that. It's just provided more questions than answers. So what we'd like to do, what I'm asking folks to do, is to go to the township manager or director of public works or whoever you know best and ask them for their salt use information in the township. And when we get this information, we're going to share that with Stroud and see if we can come up with some better estimates of how much salt is actually being applied to our roadways. The only one that we're finding is reporting at this point is PennDOT. Now I've gone to my local township and have gotten their use, but they're the only ones that have provided me the information so far. I've gone to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, pardon me, and they referred me to make a right to know request, which I've done. So we'll see how that works out for me. This salt use information report is on our website in that salt pollution page at the bottom. That could be downloaded and used, or if the township doesn't know their application rates or what they use, just their purchases will be enough that over time we can average it, and it'll give us pretty close to usage information. The Chester County Water Resources Authority produces a annual water status report. This is their most recent one from data from 2021. This was published in December of last year. And you can see that Valley Creek is up here at D, 140 milligrams per liter. This is a measurement that was taken in the fall of 2021. Low flow conditions as well, pretty much background like our salt snapshot. And it's fairly representative of what we saw on the main stem in our salt snapshot. Next week, I'm doing a presentation for the Easttown EAC, and their primary watershed is Darby Creek. So I added in their information from State of Our Streams report that Willistown Conservation Trust had done. Interesting to note that the Pickering Creek had the most dramatic increase in the county for their salinity percentage wise, and that Valley Creek has now taken over the #1 position in salinity in the county.
So Pete, I just want to say that the headwaters of Pickering, I'm consistently seeing like 340, 350 right below the turnpike in
Okay.
a spring basically a early June sampling.
Okay. Pretty much background.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and Pete, you might reach out to Lauren and Anna at Willistown because they've been monitoring. They did a snapshot recently and have been doing their high frequency monthly sampling in those headwaters of Darby Creek and have been finding some high levels from that commercial corridor that goes through there.
Okay. Okay. I just met Anna last week, so yes, we'll be talking. Pardon me. Best management practices. I'm not going to tell you where I stole this slide from, but it was probably New Hampshire or Massachusetts. I think one of the keys, well, they're all key to reducing salt use. We're never going to eliminate using salt because it's too effective at reducing accidents. I mean, the data behind that is overwhelming. So what we need to do is institute best management practices. The first key is to store it properly so that we don't have accidental runoff, which I don't think anybody really wants, but it's certainly out there happening, and yeah, we probably all can cite locations where that's happening. Calibrating the salt spreading is an important issue. Certainly locally, we tend to oversalt. It just seems to be what we do. We don't seem to adjust the level of our de-icing treatment to what the weather forecasts say is going to happen. It's always more is better. Pre-wetting or brining is especially effective and really reduces the amount of salt that's supplied. So if we can do that effectively and efficiently, that's one way to really cut down on salt use. Live edge plows. With a winter like this winter, I'm not sure we should even be talking about plows, but a live edge plow has a bunch of little fingers on the bottom of the plow or smaller blades that plow more effectively during snow events. And then evaluating after each storm, how effective was the snow removal effort? And finally, did that effort meet the expectations of the levels of service the community is expecting? And where are those levels? Are those levels realistic for what we should be seeing? So those are just a quick list of things we can be looking at. Last month, we had a presentation to the Valley Creek Restoration Partnership by a woman from New Hampshire that's involved in their salt reduction program up there. And they have a certification program, which is really interesting. And they've linked it with a law that limits the liability for salt applicators that have gone through the certification process, the certification program in New Hampshire. So that piece could be probably really necessary and impactful in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania already does have a couple of laws where we limit liability for equestrian users of private property, and also land trusts and other places where the land is open to public use, where there's limited liability. So it's not that limited liability isn't necessarily, or shouldn't be a foreign concept in Pennsylvania. So that ends my my presentation, I think. So this is a list of the presentations that I've done. I wrote articles for 2 township newsletters, one of which was published. I'm not sure about the second one. And I'm scheduled for Easttown next week. And I mentioned the Valley Creek Restoration Partnership meeting with the Green Snow Pro. Aubrey Volker is the lead for that New Hampshire salt reduction program, and did a very, very interesting program. I was going to, David had asked me a number of questions in an email to discuss when I was doing this program, and I thought I'd just go back to those questions and answer those for you. So the one thing he asked, well, I'll read the question first. Trying to help people build capacity to do the type of stuff you're doing, understanding what to present. So understanding what to present really is, it's more important, I think, to know the audience that you're presenting to and tailor your presentation to who you're speaking to. Not every audience wants the data that you folks are collecting. Some folks just want the generalities, and you know, the Watershed 101 is probably going to get you more ears than running off about Siemens per whatever it is, and milligrams per liter. And then when to present, timing, I think, is equally important to knowing your audience. If the audience hasn't become aware of salt pollution yet, then you're probably going to have to do a scaled down presentation to talk about what pollution is and how salt gets into the ground, and just a more basic presentation. And then who to present it to. You know, I feel almost comfortable enough to present to anybody except the folks down at Stroud. But identifying those different entities, some will be more technical, some will be less technical. So it's, again, identifying the target audience. And for salt pollution, I chose the EHCs as the low-hanging fruit, the ones that would be interested in pollution, and I wouldn't have to necessarily do a really dumbed-down version to have them know what I was talking about. So describing the data and what it means will be great, but also then talking about the details of how you've interacted with local decision makers and EACs in the past and presently, what has worked. Me, personal interactions work the best, and good communications. If you can talk to people one-on-one, I've found Zoom, you can hit a lot of people at one time, but you're never sure who you're impacting. You know, it's hard to read body language when you can't even see the faces. And the communication needs to be good. You need to get that kind of one-on-one communication. That needs to be ramped up. What hasn't worked is also the communications. You know, some people you can work with, some people you can't. Two-way communications, like a friendship or a partnership, are hard. I mean, it takes time to develop those kind of relationships, but that's where you get your most bang for your buck, where you can get your uh, most leverage. It's that's where you can make your inroads into your municipality, whether it be with the engineer, the director of public works, or the a supervisor. Key takeaways are working hard to maintain those lines of communication with as many people as you can. I started out working, though I live in Charlestown. I was directed by a mentor to take over the meetings in Tredyffrin, and I attended meetings in Tredyffrin for probably a dozen years. And it doesn't take long once you've attended a couple of uh, board of supervisors meetings before you're recognized. I mean, they're not that well attended typically, and if you start showing up, they notice that, and then if you talk to something that's important to them, they really start paying attention. So I think attending meetings, township meetings, is very important. What do people need to know to do and know to be effective in learning about and influencing local policy and practice? You need to know how your township operates. Every one of the townships that, well, everyone, all three or four that I've had some relationship with, operate totally differently. They're, I mean, they all have the same MPC, but you know, the people are all different. They get elected at different times. They have different historical perspectives. They want different things for their uh, their electoral body. Um, it's it's just different in each place. So you need to know how mechanically the operation works, and need to know how politically it works, because politically is different than mechanically. And the hardest part is maintaining those personal connections. And it's really tough for us in the watershed business, because our watersheds aren't bounded by those municipality lines. Those municipal boundaries don't really care where the creek runs. And trying to maintain personal connections over 3 or 4 townships is challenging. Easiest part is maintaining the friendships if they're close. You know, some of my best friends I met early on doing this work, so that's the greatest part. Give examples of your current work. Well, I'm not good at doing one thing, so I've got my fingers in a whole lot of things. So I'm pleased to announce that Charlestown Township is the 37th bird town. I had a bit to do with that. The salt brochure I'm very proud of. I had a bit to do with that. The salt snapshot, I liked that we were able to pull that off, and that's providing some good information and some good impetus to look further at the watershed and see what we can learn. I've got a riparian buffer planted in an HOA, which was like a life goal. That doesn't happen every day. And I've got a stream naming project in the wind. So yeah, I got a lot of irons in the fire. When I've been when you successful.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah,
Tally has some questions here.
okay, that's fine. Why don't we just do that?
Tally asks, what are some questions you've received from your audience? Any skepticism regarding the data? And does the topic of cost monetary savings ever come up?
That's a whole lot of questions in one question. So I've received a lot of questions. Most of them have been like policy kind of stuff, or not so much questioning the data. I don't know that I've gotten any that have questioned the data. I think people are pretty accepting of that when they hear that it's done in conjunction with Stroud, that kind of confirms things. There's been questions about more the chemical. Okay, which chemical is worse for the environment, the Na or the Cl? And it's like, like, it's like both. It goes into solution and then it's bad. So I'm not a chemist. I can't answer those questions. And I'll say that. And if somebody asks a question that I can't answer, that's a really good question, I'll ask them to email it to me and I'll find out the answer and get back to them. Cost is a consideration, and it's that was one thing that came up in Tredyffrin, was that when I wrote the article for them, the EAC had told me that they really didn't care about pollution so much in the stream, but that I should write it from the viewpoint of the dog and how it could make him sick to his stomach or something. It was like
interesting.
And then there was the cost concern of the rotting infrastructure and the underside of your car, and those kind of questions. What was the last piece of Tally's question?
There was, what are questions you received from your audience? Any skepticism, and then does the topic of cost savings ever come up? So I think you got all.
So the other piece of the cost was that, I guess in the last presentation I did, there was one fellow that said that he knew specifically that the landscaper that handled the parking lot where he worked was paid by the poundage of salt that he applied. So that is another little snippet to put in the back of your mind, that maybe we're doing this with the wrong idea or the wrong motivation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So we are at 3:24 right now. Before we get too late here, I want to make sure that everyone has seen Tally. Tally MacArthur is attending today. She is with Pennsylvania Organization for Watersheds and Rivers. She is doing similar type stuff to our new local policy practice group. Tally and Dave Manning and Ian have been in touch already, and I've talked with Tally. But note that she put in the chat an event that's coming up that kind of relates to some of the stuff we've been talking about. Tally, you feel free to chime in if you want to say anything.
Just hi, thanks for inviting me. I'm sure that I'm somewhat familiar with some of the names here, and maybe some of you are familiar with us and Power. But yeah, we are continuing to advance our what we call meaningful engagement with municipal government initiative. And part of that is this 2-part webinar series that we're doing in March. And it's the topic is specifically related to green parking lots, but definitely related to stormwater runoff and some climate change and heat island effects and things like that. But and the second part is going to focus a whole lot more on working with your local government ordinances and other ways to engage to consider better approaches to new and retrofitting parking lots. And then I saw something in the chat, sorry. We're not really, I mean, we're starting to, I guess, in terms of our efforts to increase awareness and reduce salt usage. I mean, that's why I'm here. I want to learn from all of you and take some of your case studies and efforts. You know, we're a statewide organization, and you guys are doing some amazing work that I think other of the river basins and the watershed organizations in them sounds to me could learn a lot from you guys.
So potential collaborations there, potential kind of synergistic relationships where we can help each other build. So we will, I guess, see where this goes, and we're already kind of planning some follow-up meetings and such. So thanks, Tally, for attending, and appreciate your invitation to attend the upcoming events. Any questions before we hit 3:30 now here for any follow-up questions for Pete? Follow-up questions for David Manning? Follow-up questions for the Stroud Center? Any technical stuff? Any other questions?
I put a question in the chat. I guess it could be directed towards Pete. I can just summarize it. First of all, I have a question. EAC in Pennsylvania stands for what? Environmental Advisory Committee or councils?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Fine. I guess my thing is getting to the public. And earlier I was looking for our provocative postcard. My experience is for doing farmers markets and events in the Port Jervis, Sullivan County, Mamakating area, and a few others, Otisville, citywide yard sale, having a tent and having, we blew up really gross pictures of pollution in the Bashakill. And then we had our little postcard. Next meeting, I will have that. And you turn it over and it had all the bullet points. This is the history of the pollution. This is what they plan, blah, blah, blah. But that's how we engaged people. And it stopped people in some people in their tracks and had a sign up. This for citizens for interest, with the promise that we wouldn't send them emails every day. And that got a lot of people interested, and we were able to attract volunteers from knowing nothing. And it was one-on-one, and it took a lot of practice, particularly on my part, to get our, you know, in film, they call it log lines. You get your rap down to two or three sentences and make it very natural, comprehensible. And it's really, it's outreach, it's PR outreach. And you use advertising techniques, and you have a strategy so that you're not working with the converted or the people who already have interests. Kids of all ages are attracted. And So I think that's a really good way to go. If you have those events available, having a permanent tent, little investment. But that's my take on how you can be effective. You also mentioned very few people attend meetings, and it's a huge another project to work on civic engagement. But because it seems in everywhere, very few people attend planning board meetings unless they're an applicant, and town board meetings unless they are already on the agenda. So it's it's a very big deal to get people on this level. And we our technique has been give them a little at the beginning and get an invite. That's your objective, to get an invite to return and share more information. That's it.
That's great, Grace. Thank you. That's nice information. If you'd like to share your products in one of these meetings, feel free. We can get them into a presentation, as one of our updates, and just
Oh,
share,
okay,
share
I'll
that imagery with people.
yeah, we'll scan it, right.
Great. All right, well, we are at 3:30 now, so we'll call it a meeting. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free. I'm going to stop recording now, and then we can continue if anyone has any follow-up questions.